Good morning. This is Lee Tolton
Joe Tolton.
and we're coming to you from our living room because the pandemic has gotten pretty bad in Preble County and people feel more confident to stay home, and so we can probably worship better that way. If you're a member of the meeting, you've got a Zoom link and an ability to just go directly to us. At 10:45 in the morning, we'll start with 15 minutes of check-in and being with one another, and then we'll go into silent worship. The scripture this morning is from Isaiah 9, 4 through 7. And it begins with, "As on the day of Midian, you shattered the yoke that burdened them, the staff on their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, because your every boot of the thundering warriors and every garment rolled in blood will be burned, fuel for fire. A child is born to us, a son is given to us, and the authority will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be vast authority and endless peace for David's throne and for his kingdom, establishing and sustaining it with justice and righteousness now and forever." Do you ever think you know what's going to happen on a particular date, or have an expectation of something, and then it feels terrible when it falls short of that or goes in a different direction? Maybe your spouse was going to come home to surprise you, or they thought that you would have dinner made and everything would be fine, and you find somebody home with a headache that he didn't feel like that at that time. We have disappointment when we have a feeling of expectation and it doesn't get followed through on. Maybe you relaxed and it was your first day in 2 weeks to have off, and someone comes to the door and tells you you've got some work to do. We all have frustrating moments, but when what you believe gives you the hope you need to survive, and then that hope that you put all of your faith in doesn't come out like you wanted it to, then you feel angry and upset, frustrated. We many times say that the Hebrews at the time of the birth of Christ just didn't know what they were supposed to expect. But they've got book upon book telling them that the Messiah is going to be this throne, this government, and that it's going to be on his shoulders. And because he takes care of this government, then we should expect him to be this Messiah. Do you ever dream away trying to think of what your future is going to be like? Especially like times right now when it's uncertain. How many times does it take for us to be disappointed before we give up? And it's not that God wanted his people or all people to be disappointed. I had an incident that happened once where I was at Topsail Island and Topsail Beach, and I was swimming with a noodle, so you can rest and I got caught by an undertow. And I refused to let go of that noodle because I thought that noodle was saving me. And I was holding in the middle and it was farther down. It bent down. So it is what was keeping me in the undertow. If I would have let go of that noodle and swam horizontal to the beach, I could have survived. But I was putting all my hope in what I thought. I was putting everything that I had into how I could save myself. And sometimes what God is telling us is the government's not going to save you. Your friends are not going to come flying through. It's wonderful when that happens. But when all of that just folds down, the Nativity reminds us that in the worst and the most desperate places, that God is there. That even if Christ has to be born as a baby that has to be with an unwed mother and stuck under a hotel or an inn in its barn, even when that happens, Christ is there. There's hope there. The people had been through so much, and they had held on to these scriptures for hope. It's like some of our Christians right now that really believe that this is Armageddon and Christ's going to be back any minute, and that has happened so many times. But every day Christ comes back. Every day Christ is here. The only thing we have to do is start listening by taking our abilities and setting them to the side and sitting and listening for God's will. Whatever it is we think we're going to save us with, we still need God's will. Our happiness will not be just expectations that have gotten met. Our happiness will be that our spiritual needs are met. That's joy, and joy then satisfies in a much different and much better way than just being happy. But these people have been waiting for 160 years at that moment. And they had been told that they had been told by their scribes, by the people who ministered to them, the rabbis, by there were different sects that were fighting with each other. And when Jesus came along, Herod had already said, "I'm the Messiah." There was a large amount of people that were called Herodians that were there in Jerusalem. They were questioning Jesus. But one of the other things they did is take the Sadducees and the Pharisees and they pitted them against each other. And they got so entrenched on their argument with each other that they forgot to even listen for anything new. We can't be that distracted. And this past year and these past 4 years, all we've done is fight with each other, and we have to stop. We have to open ourselves to God's will and quit saying, this is it, you should do what I say. If we're to act out this nativity story with this Christ within all of us, in our most desperate, desolate places, Christ is still within. We have to stop and listen. They had been waiting for this. And it wasn't just Isaiah 6. It was, it comes out of Jeremiah and Micah. All these prophets had said the same thing. So they were just looking for this branch of righteousness. Jeremiah 23 says, I will raise to David a branch of righteousness. A king shall reign and prosper and execute judgment and righteousness in the earth. They may have had it wrong, but so many times don't we read the scriptures like that? Don't we say, oh, it needs to be literal. You can't take it away from what it was. You can't change it at all. It says these words, and that's what you should be. It says that you're supposed to be treating gay people as if they're an abomination. No, that is not true. That you're supposed to be a woman submissive to a man. Get over it. No, it's not true. God says the deeper meaning. It's like the net that the fishermen were fishing with, and Christ said, well, you don't have any fish today. Check the other side of the boat. How's this working for you? If you're not able to listen to the Christ within you, you're just pulling up your net and there's nothing in there. We can't keep pounding on each other and expecting government to save us and being mean to one another and throwing that net down. We cannot do that. If we're going to be fisher of people all over this world, we got to throw it on the other side. We got to listen to where Christ tells us to go. So many times we've heard that insanity is doing the same thing and expecting it to come out differently. The nativity story tells us that if we want to pull our nets up with fish, we better stop and listen to Christ. Called the Lord of our righteousness. That branch of judgment and peace, it's in here. It's not in the White House. No matter whose side you're looking on, quit trying to get everybody to agree on a human being. Unfortunately, human beings can be very charismatic, and they can lie and they can manipulate, but God doesn't. Christ loves. 1 John 4 says if we had any kind of notion that this leader or whoever you're following is an instrument of Christ, you're supposed to check on one thing. Is it loving? Because it says God is love. We teach the children the last of that verse because we as adults don't seem to be able to digest the first of it. Yes, God is love, but God is loving. God is kind. God is merciful. God is compassionate. Christ is the Prince of Peace. If we've learned anything in 2020, especially like through Black Lives Matter or through many of the other awakenings that have happened, we've learned that if we don't change ourselves, if we don't work on us, if we don't get rid of our racism, if we don't get rid of our sexism, if we don't get rid of the things that we say, oh, well, I believe like that, and then turn around and not admit it, not accept it. If we don't do that, all of our governments will look just like us. I understand people who are saying things like defund the police. But what they're really saying is that as long as our structures are full of people who won't work on their stuff, our structures will just be indicative of the people who won't work on their stuff. And then we have to go around and we tell each other, well, we're just going to make the government like that. No, if you do that, people are just going to argue and fight because the only real way to make change is within us. All over the world, we are here to live out the Christ story. We are here as the stables within, and Christ is here. It's Christmas because Emmanuel, God is with us. God is in us. And if we want the world to be joyful, it isn't about ripping open a present. It isn't about having all the right answers. It's not pretty lights. It's not trees. The real joy of Christmas will come when we show love and forgiveness and mercy and grace. Hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas. See you at 10:45.